I have no idea, but historically, everybody knows that they've always seen commercials and promotional advertisement with uniforms. So I don't know why this will be anything differently. But at the end of the day, I have the deepest respect for this agency and what my uniform symbolizes, and I would never tarnish that, and that's why I pulled the commercial, so I would be in compliance with what our current sheriff has asked of me. But as you see in my letter, I did request permission as well.
Yeah, you sent a letter back to Pat Ivy asking permission to appear in ads in uniform. Do you expect to be granted that given that he's endorsed your opponent?
Look, we got 25 days, and I'm fired up. I'm not going to let anything stop or silence me. I'm prepared to film another commercial out of my uniform. Everybody knows that I'm a police officer, and so we'll just look for another commercial.
5492937. We'll go to your calls for Sheriff candidate Lakesha Burton in a bit. We've also reached out to her opponent, TK Waters, and hope to speak with him before the election. Now, you mentioned this race ultimately shouldn't be about accusations and distractions like this flap over uniforms, but how to improve public safety in Jacksonville, in Duval County, make this a safer place to live. You've talked a lot about this on the campaign trail. Tell us about your record with the JSO and how you would improve crime numbers for this city.
Well, I've been running my campaign on change. So, and everybody knows as a zone commander, I was able to reduce crime by historic numbers because I implemented what I like to call an integrated public safety model, and I want to duplicate that all over our city. So it's based on four pillars: is culture, community, crime, and cost. So just from a bird's eye view, I believe that we have to first change the culture of this police department from the inside out. Then secondly, we need to cultivate a culture of community policing agency-wide. And then we have to address our crime issue from a more comprehensive approach. And I've been focusing on education, intervention, prevention, and enforcement. We have to stop being reactive. And that fourth C is conservative spending. Listen, Melissa, we have a budget of over $500 million. Our city should be safer, and we're not. So I will be accountable to the taxpayers for every single dollar while ensuring that our agency has what it needs to keep our officers in our city safe.
Tell us more about your record with JSO. The election for sheriff is coming up November 8th. It's a special election to fill the remainder of former Sheriff Mike Williams' term. Of course, he was forced out after controversy when it was discovered he wasn't even living in Duval County. So there's an accelerated timetable for people to learn about the candidates and cast their ballot. As folks weigh this decision, tell us more about your record with the agency.
I'm very proud of my record. So my reputation, my record, and my results. I am someone who has been known to not compromise my integrity. My record, everywhere I've worked within this agency over the last 24 years, the people, the place, and the processes have been successful. And my results, I've been producing results my entire career, whether it's been reducing violent crime, property crime, but most importantly, I've been very successful with bridging the gap between community and law enforcement. Look, I've been on the campaign trail for 18 months. We have two cities in one. I want to bridge that gap so we can be one. It can no longer be us, the police, against our community. It has to be we. And I have a proven record of being able to do that.
And
I
when you
think
say
that
us, not or we, not us and them, are you talking about restoring trust in policing?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So there are pockets all over this city that have historically had a distrust for police. And if we're going to tackle the violent crime issue in this city, we need a sheriff that's going to be proactive and re-engage in our community because we have to have communities buy in and support to address the crime that we're seeing in the city.
Let's go to your calls now for Sheriff candidate Lakesha Burton. She's in the runoff election for Jacksonville Sheriff. The election is November 8th. We've also reached out to her opponent, TK Waters, and hope to speak with him before all of you cast your ballots. 5492937. Jerry in Atlantic Beach. Go ahead, Jerry.
Hi, thank you for taking my call. My question for Lakesha Burton is I was wondering if you had any plans like other candidates have in partnerships with anti-violence and criminal justice reform groups in the community and how you plan on bridging that connection that you were mentioning.
Thanks for that. Yeah, what about groups like I Care? That's one that comes to mind, and others that have been pushing JSO for some time now on a number of criminal justice reforms.
Thank you for that question, Jerry. So I believe that under my leadership, we're going to have a fresh start. I think we have to start having these hard conversations. So as a sheriff, I'm going to be representing every member of this community. I think we have to have a sheriff that's willing to sit and have these tough conversations. So
community, here we are ending the Hispanic Heritage Month, and the Hispanic community here in this city has grown by 6% a year every year during the last 10 years or more. What is your perspective? What is the Sheriff's Department supposed to be doing about this?
Thank you for that. Yeah, by the way, we're going to be talking about a special event honoring Hispanic Heritage Month later in the show. Chad, thank you for that. Lakesha Burton.
Thank you, Chad. So I embrace our Hispanic warm culture. I've done a lot of work with the Hispanic community. As a chief, I was assistant chief. I was over our community engagement unit where we had the Hispanic unit. So I've done a lot of work. So as a zone commander, when Hispanics were being targeted by violent crime or were being robbed, we had a customized approach to it. So I identified all of my Spanish-speaking officers, and we got out in those communities in plain clothes. So because we recognize that a lot of the Hispanic community are fearful. So we established a relationship, and when we did that, we began to address a lot of those concerns. So I think that we have to make sure that we're recruiting a more diverse agency and that we are more responsive to all parts of our community, but particularly the Hispanic community. I think we did a good job in my zone, so I want to make sure that the things that we did in Zone 2 is replicated all over our city.
Would that also entail appointing more Hispanic law enforcement officers to senior roles in the agency?
Well, we have a process. You have to earn those promotions, but I think that the first thing we have to do is make sure that we are recruiting more Hispanic, and so we can have a more diverse agency so we can be reflective of our community.
Lots of calls. If you're just tuning in, we're speaking with Sheriff Candidate Lakesha Burton on the show today. Stephen in Jacksonville. Hi, Stephen.
Hey, how are you this morning?
Good. Go ahead.
Thanks for taking my call. I have more of a comment instead of a question. Hey, Lakesha. I was at a event where Lakesha was speaking earlier on in her running, and I just want to say that she was upfront and honest about her past with everybody there. It was nothing that was recent. It was all in her past, and I feel like we all have made mistakes in our past. So I feel like whatever the smear campaign was targeted at her for to make her look bad, I just hope that everybody really considers what she's done with her career recently, as opposed to whatever this nonsense was about her past. So thank you.
All right, let's talk about that. Your opponent, TK Waters, has run campaign material talking about issues in your past. Your response?
First, I want to thank Stephen for those comments. First of all, I just want to go on record again to say that my opponent and I are not enemies. We are colleagues competing to be the Chief Law Enforcement Officer of Duval County. And it's very clear that we're running different campaigns from a different spirit. His campaign has been about my personal life, and my campaign has been about his failed approach to reduce crime in our city. He's been over the violent crime unit for 7 years, and what I've been doing is I have a record of reducing crime and bridging the gap between JSO and our community. And Melissa, look, all of these half-truths and lies have been debunked, and if you're listening today, just go ahead and Google the stories. I've spoken to all of them, and, the sad thing is they continue to run these commercials of lies to fool the voters. Look, the voters deserve a leader who will speak truth and who will not hide once they throw rocks. So to all of those listening this morning, you really have to ask yourself, do you want a sheriff who's going to be honest and transparent, or do you want somebody who's going to double down on lies and communicate with you via written correspondence? You deserve better, and you're going to get better from me as your sheriff.
And that references what we led off with, the letter from Sheriff Pat Ivey telling you can't appear in uniform in campaign ads anymore without his written authorization. He has endorsed your opponent, TK Waters, who is also appearing on the air in his uniform. We are getting lots of tweets about this, emails. Teresa tweets the show. If Burton has to do this, then every single firefighter or police officer needs to not be in any political ad in uniform. What about that, Lakesha Burton? Because it's common for law enforcement to appear in uniform in campaign ads so that people see that they've served, that they're a sworn officer. But are you saying that Sheriff Ivey is being selective in his approval, granting candidates the privilege of wearing the uniform in the ads? Should candidates just not be allowed to do this at all? I think is what some people are wondering.
Yeah, what I want to stress is that we should not get distracted by these ploys, okay? We have 25 days, and voters have an option to vote on if you want to remain things, if you want things to remain the same or if you want change. I want people to focus on my record. You know, we have a violent crime problem in this city, and I'm the only candidate that has a proven record of reducing crime and bridging the gap between community and JSO. And that is my focus, and that's what we should be focused on.
Totally understand that. But if I could ask you, though, as a follow-up, do you think that the Sheriff Ivey is being selective in telling you cannot appear in ads in uniform, but seems to be allowing your opponent to, who he has endorsed?
Well, it's political, you know. We know it's political, and this is why I'm running, because we have to take the politics out of public safety, you know. So this is all part of their narrative that they've been trying to create about me, you know, from day one. Lawless Lakesha, she's a criminal. She stole this, she stole that. So this is all a part of their narrative, but I reject it in every sense. I'm not what I used to be. I'm not what happened to me. I've had a stellar career, and I've been able to inspire so many people, and especially young people, so they'll know that your past doesn't have to define who you are or dictate your future, and that you can become a law-abiding citizen and contribute to our society, just like I did, and now I'm running to be the next sheriff. What a great example.
Lots of calls. Devin and Jax. Hi, Devin. You're on the air. Go ahead.
Hi, I want to make a comment. As a criminal justice major, born and raised in Jacksonville, Florida, I want to thank her for taking the high ground, because her opponent's really not sticking to the issues, because I guess he really doesn't have any facts to base or prove his point. So he has to take the low ground, and I want to give accolades to her for taking the high ground and sticking to the issues. And that's all I wanted to say. Good luck in her campaign, because I mean it seems like it's the old good boy network in the city, and she's sticking to the high ground, because like you said, like you pointed out, other fire officials, other officials have worn their uniform and doing campaigns and all that. So why would this be an issue for a person who's unable to stick to issues or have facts to prove his issue? And thank you for letting me speak today.
All right, thank you. Lakesha Burton, are you running against this city's good old boy network?
Well, for lack of better terms, you know, people call it different things, establishment or good old boy system. Look, I've said from day one, I'm not running against my opponent. I'm running for the people. My candidacy has not been about prestige, political party, or power. It's about the people. That's why I got in this race, and that's why I'm running in 25 days. The voters have options on the ballot. We can either remain the same or we can change for the good for all people in the city. That's who I represent.
Steve in Hastings, Florida. Hi, Steve. Go ahead.
Hi, good morning. Yes, ma'am. I was curious. I'm currently an appointed special process server in St. Johns County, and was wondering your stance on opening appointments back up in Duval County. Currently, I believe there's less than 60 currently active in Duval County, but the volume of work that they were able to take off of officers, I think could help make their availability or increase their availability and their utility to the community quite a bit. And just wanted to see what your thoughts were on that possibility if you took office.
All righty. Thanks for that.
Stephen. Thank you, Stephen. So what I plan to do once I get in office, obviously, once I'm elected, I'll have 3 months, and then we have the spring election. So, but with me, the agency will have a new set of lens and new perspective. So I intend to do an assessment of all of our agency departments and processes. So that's certainly something that I'll be looking into. You know, my ultimate goal is to make sure that we are efficient and we're providing the best services to our community. So that'll be something that I'll look at.
Jacqueline on the north side. Hi, Jacqueline. Good morning. Go ahead.
Good morning. I'm calling from Jacksonville North Side, and I'd like for Ms. Burton to give me an example of how she will address and try to prevent the youth crime in our violent crime in our neighborhood.
Thank you, Jacqueline. Thanks for that. Lakesha Burton.
Thank you, Jacqueline, for that question. So I've always been an advocate for youth. Obviously, prevention, intervention is important for me. I'm just very honored that just last year that the Secretary of the Department of Juvenile Justice just recognized my work for over 15 years. So many know that I was the executive director over the Police Athletic League, which is a youth-serving nonprofit. It was a very nonprofit that saved my life at 16 years old when I walked through the doors with my baby. So early intervention, prevention is important. So I think that we have to have better stronger relationships with all of our community stakeholders, you know, the community, the faith-based, the business community. So I'll look at our programs that we have in the agency. I have been very blessed to be able to write several curriculums and programs myself in regards to our youth. So there's a lot of work to be done, but I can tell you as your sheriff, that will be a number one priority. Look, I'm a mother. We've had roughly 15 kids murdered in this city, and I'm outraged. We're too quiet. It's almost as if this has become the norm.
I'm sorry to cut you off. 15 kids in the last year?
Roughly 15 kids in our city has been murdered, yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and
yes,
the murder rate continues unabated in this city year on year, whether it's juveniles or adults. We have just an incredibly high homicide rate.
We do. Last night I was just at a candlelight vigil for a mother who buried her 18-year-old daughter just last month. So enough is enough. I'm ready to get ahead of this. We're too quiet as a city. The community, our agency, we're too quiet. So when I'm sheriff, I'm going to lead from the front, and we're going to get a hold of all this.
Let me ask you as a follow-up. Both you and your opponent, TK Waters, have decades with this police agency. What would you say to those who do want change, but they don't believe either you or your opponent is capable of bringing about the kind of transformative change a police agency like JSO needs, that activists have been pressing for and that community advocates have been lobbying for? There's cynicism about how much change I think is possible. What's your response to that?
Well, I can certainly understand the skepticism from many people. Well, what I would say is that you have to look at our track records, and it's very, very clear. So, again, I have a proven record of reducing crime, bridging the gap between law enforcement and our community. I've had a stellar career, but nobody wants to talk about that. So I think that you have to look at somebody's track record. The best indicator of what somebody's going to do is what they've already done. And I got to tell you, if you have a sheriff candidate or any candidates running for public office that won't join the radio or talk to the media and talk to you about the issues and what they plan to do, we should be worried about that. And that's the type of sheriff I'll be. I'll be visible, accessible,
is that a reference to your opponent? Are you referring to your opponent?
I'm sorry?
Are you referring to your opponent when you say that?
I'm referring to my opponent and anybody else who wants to serve in a leadership role in this city. We owe it to the voters of Duval County.
5492937. Marcus on the north side. Go ahead, Marcus.
Yes, I want to ask a question about the car meetups and how it relates to crime, because we have a young kid problem with crime in this city, and it's because there's nothing for these young kids to do. And they have car meetups because there's nothing for them to do, and now they're getting arrested at a high rate for having nothing to do. And when they don't meet up, they go out and they commit crime because there's nothing to do in our city. So I would like to know, like, how would she address the car meetup situation?
That has been a problem. Drag racing, too. Police have been responding to it, but what about this issue? Lakesha Burton.
Yeah, thank you, Marcus. I believe that every issue that we have in this city, we have to address it from a comprehensive approach. Arresting our way out of it is not going to address it. So we have to do more education, prevention, intervention, and enforcement. And I can tell you, the police can't do it alone. So for me, I want to galvanize this community and get them involved. And a lot of times people don't know, they don't have enough information. So we got to make sure that we're putting out more information and getting the community engaged. All of our issues that we are impacted by in this city is going to take all of us working collectively together. But I can tell you, as your sheriff, everything that I'm responsible for, we're going to get ahead of that and do even more.
A tweet from a listener: I would ask Burton's opponent, TK Waters, how he would manage a $500 million police budget when he has a personal bankruptcy under his belt, but he blocked me, so I can't ask him that. Let me ask you about this. In the closing weeks of the campaign, races tend to get increasingly negative, whether it's for sheriff or anything else. Your opponent has made accusations about you. Do you plan to go negative in the closing weeks? You said you're going to be filming a new campaign commercial because you've received this letter from the sheriff. So I'm just wanting to get your thoughts about that.
No, I'm absolutely not going in the gutter or personal. Again, we're better than that. I think my work ethic, my performance, my work product, and my results in this agency are undisputable. I'm running on my record. So, and I just got to tell you, this whole idea that it's the consultants. Look, I have consultants, but they don't speak for me. I'm a part of the Democratic Party, but they don't speak for me. I speak for myself. So everything that you see that come out on my behalf is for me. So I'm focused on the people, and I'm focused on the issues. So that's what you can expect from me. And at the end of the day, I respect TK Waters. I would never go personal on him.
You are a Democrat, as you mentioned. Your opponent is a Republican. And how much do you think partisanship will drive this contest?
I'm not sure, but I can tell you the politics is destroying our democracy and law enforcement. Look, law enforcement is not about a party. You know, when you call 911, you're not asking for a Democrat, Independent, Republican. You want a well-qualified, trained police officer, and I'll make sure you get just that. So we got to get back to serving the people and take the politics out of public safety, and that's what I want to do.
So many more calls coming in. I know you have to jump off in a moment, but let me get one more call in. It's Charles on the west side. Go ahead, Charles.
Yeah, hi, Officer Burton. Back in the day, in the 70s and the 80s, when we were having a car problem with around town with racing, what the sheriff's department did back then, I think, was had drag races that were supervised and sponsored out there on the old Imeson airport strip, and that kind of got everybody off the streets. What do you think about doing something like that?
Thanks for that, Charles.
I
Officer
know,
Burton.
Charles on the west side. Yes. Look, I got to get in first, and I want to do some research. I want to look at what the best practices are. But I do believe that we need to be a little more innovative and creative in terms of how we address the issues that we're facing in our city. And I have heard some suggestions of that. So I'm open to looking at what the best thing that we can do for our citizens while keeping them safe. But also, when we have to enforce the law, we're going to do just that.
You mentioned you have to get elected first. If elected, how would the first 100 days of your term as sheriff, what would be at the very top of your to-do list?
Well, the first is lots to do, but we have a violent crime problem in the city, and I think that we will convene and make sure that we are putting together an initiative to address the criminals that are running around our city as if it's the Wild Wild West. So I want to focus on addressing those that have these illegal guns. I want to get those who have outstanding warrants off the streets, and not only do that, the citizens will hear directly from me about what we're doing, how we're doing it, and how the citizens can get involved to help us. Again, We're roughly 96 murders right now. Enough is enough. We got to get ahead of it, and it's going to take some bold leadership. And and that's what I bring to the table: leadership.
Lakesha Burton, thanks for joining the program.
I appreciate it. So if anybody else wants to talk to me, Melissa, they can call me on my cell number 904-885-0646. 904-885-0646. Thank you, Melissa.
Thank you. We've reached out to Burton's opponent, TK Waters, and hope to have him on the program before the election. You, the voters of Duval County, will decide this race. Election day is November 8th. So study up on the candidates, and we'll keep covering them as well at wjctnews.org. Lots of candidate information there. Much more still ahead. Coming up, it's a new series here on Jack's PBS.
I'm really excited. I've been dreaming about this for 20 years. I've always wanted to do a series specializing on art because I love art. I've been a tour guide for 30 years.
We speak with beloved PBS host Rick Steves about his new show, Art of Europe. That's after this. Don't go away. Well, PBS host Rick Steves is back at it this month with a brand new show. Rick Steves' Art of Europe begins airing on Jack's PBS this Sunday. I touched base with Rick Steves about everything involved in the making of this new production, and here's that conversation. Take a listen. Rick Steves, such a pleasure to talk with you, and thank you so much for being with us.
Oh, it's my joy and my pleasure, Melissa. Thank you.
I'm so excited that you have a new series airing on Jack's PBS this month, Rick Steves' Art of Europe. So how will this differ from your other amazing programs educating us all about Europe?
Wow, you're excited. I'm really excited. I've been dreaming about this for 20 years. We've been, we make a lot of TV shows for public television that are just our regular episodes. But I've always wanted to do a series specializing on art because I love art. I've been a tour guide for 30 years. I used to, when I was a kid in my 20s, I gave a 6-hour lecture on European art that followed up my all-day How to Travel lecture. And we've spent the last 2 years working on this project where we've got the story of Europe. It's called Rick Steves' Art of Europe, distilled into 6 hours. Of course, if I was Ken Burns, I could take 26 hours. But I love just settling in and enjoying a long Ken Burns series. But I just decided, hey, let's just really make it, tight. And this is the sweep of the story of Europe from prehistoric times to Picasso. And it was so much fun to be able to go to Europe, to all these great museums, and then use the skills I've developed over, decades of tour guiding, leading groups around Europe on our bus tours, to help people better appreciate and enjoy the artistic wonders of Europe, all the art and all the architecture. And, there's so many examples. You go to the Pantheon in Rome, and you step into it, and it's the building where you enjoy the magnificence and the splendor of Rome at its zenith better than any other building. And then outside, you look at these big one-piece granite columns, and we even filmed 4 tourists putting their arms around it. It takes 4 people to hug a column like that. And these are 50-ton columns that were quarried in Egypt, put into a big rowboat, and shipped all the way from Egypt to Rome and then assembled there 2,000 years ago. And today, we can still enjoy that. And we step inside, and it's this beautiful example of Roman aesthetics. It's a circle in a cube. It's a sphere in a cube, a perfect circle, 140 feet wide and 140 feet tall with a skylight on the top. And you think 2,000 years ago, this was a pantheon, a temple to all the gods. And today you step in there and you still get a feeling that column created by the sun shining through the skylight creates this connection with heaven that it must have done 2,000 years ago.
Well, Any fan of your work knows that you are an art lover. You always include art in your programs, educating us about so many beautiful pieces and locations across Europe. So I guess, as you said, this is something you've been wanting to do for a long time. Just do more of a hyper focus
Yeah.
on the artistic achievements that we see across Europe.
Yeah, we dabble in the art in all the shows, so there's 2 minutes here and 2 minutes there, and we were able to pull a lot from our archives because we're going to the greatest art all over Europe, from Scotland to Portugal to Greece to Norway, and tying it all together into this story. And you learn, well, when I was a kid, I remember going to the dorms at the university, and we got out the class catalog and we played a game. What is the most boring class here? What is the class you're least likely to take? And I thought, art history. Why would anybody take that? And it's so funny because with travel, with some good professors and with some great experiences, and after being a tour guide for so long, I've realized if you don't understand art, it's because you don't know about it. And the more you understand it, the more joy it'll bring you. And it's so important. It lets us, it's kind of like a time tunnel experience. It takes us back. It lets us celebrate how far we've come. It lets us better understand where we are now, and I think help us, shape where we're going to go. And of course, there's great art all over the world. What I wanted to do, thanks to public television, was to just focus on European art and get an updated look at the wonders of Europe. I was inspired by a very stuffy and very brilliant series by Kenneth Clark, which came out back in the old days on television, and it was called Civilization. And it was so beautiful, but it was just so plodding and sophisticated and scholarly. And what I've learned is that art can be fun, and we're going to make it fun, and we're going to make it meaningful. And things, with public television, I always say it's really nice to produce for public television and public radio, because you can assume an attention span, and you can respect people's intelligence, and you're producing programming that it's not driven by a passion for keeping advertisers happy, but by a passion for inspiring people to reach out and celebrate the world in all its beauty and diversity. It's just so in keeping with the mission of public broadcasting. And for me, this is sort of the culmination of a lifetime of travel writing and tour guiding and TV production to have this 6-hour series. And I understand it's debuting on Jack's PBS Sunday, October 16th at 5:00, and then it'll go for 6 weeks. And I wish I could be right there sitting with everybody as we watch it. We're gonna be in Stonehenge, and we're gonna be in those 20,000-year-old cave paintings, and we're gonna be going to Egypt and into the middle of the pyramids, and we're gonna go to the greatest temples of Greece. And
oh wow!
And that'll just kick it off. It's Melissa, it's 6 hours. The first hour is prehistoric up through ancient Greece. The second hour is ancient Rome, and that's a 1,000-year story from 500 BC to 500 AD. It grew for 500 years, peaked for 200 years, and fell for 300 years. It's a little more complicated than that, so we'll take an hour for the best of Rome. And then we have a third hour, which is the Middle Ages, from about 500 to 1500. And there's so much wonder in the Middle Ages, and to gain an appreciation for Gothic architecture and stained glass and these tapestries that suddenly are people are being sensual and enjoying the good things in life and so on. And then the fourth hour is the Renaissance, and that goes from about 1400 to 1600. And the Renaissance is followed by the Baroque age. And the flip side of Baroque is neoclassical. So you have all this divine monarchs and, Louis the 14th and Versailles and fancy gilding and all this. And then it gets like, let them eat cake too much. And finally, people rise up, and you have the Revolution, you have the Enlightenment, and you have the neoclassical art. That is the answer to the over-the-top, frilly Baroque. And in neoclassical, everything is subjected to the test of reason. And I just love that period. And then the final hour is the modern age. And the modern age goes from about 1850 until today. And that's really an eye-opener for a lot of people, because there's a lot of art in the 20th century that we have a hard time getting our brains around. And it's fun to travel around Europe and visit the greatest galleries and to gain an understanding and appreciation for all the ways that art has evolved over the ages.
Wow. I don't know how you were even able to narrow all this down into 6 hours. There's such a huge breadth of work and different countries, different periods, as you mentioned.
Mhm.
Do you have a favorite era? Do you have a favorite
Well, it was
artist?
hard to narrow it down. It was really frustrating because our first rough drafts of our script were 2 hours. I just know from my experience that you get about 13,000 words for a 1 hour script, and the first draft of our script was at least 2 hours for every hour, and I just thought, how on earth are we going to do this? And it's a discipline to keep things short and tight, but we got it down, and a lot of beautiful stuff ended up on the cutting room floor. In fact, we finally finished the series a couple of weeks ago, and then I remembered, there was a lot of great stuff that I wanted to get in the series, and I had a little meeting with my crew, and we're going to collect that and offer it, on the support for a little, like the equivalent of DVD extras and so on. So we'll get to check out the things that we weren't able to cover. But it was a good discipline to have to make it tight, and I'm really happy with the way things ultimately panned out. And I think you asked me about my favorite hour of that, or how do we?
Yeah, do you have a favorite artistic period or a favorite artist, a favorite work of art in Europe or a museum that's your favorite?
I really love the whole idea of humanism. And when we look into the eyes of David, Michelangelo's David, carved in Florence 500 years ago, of course, the Bible story is David is the shepherd boy, and he's got his sling, and he's looking at the giant, and he's sizing him up. Can I hit this guy? But when you look into the eyes of David, Michelangelo wasn't just painting a shepherd boy slaying a giant. It was symbolic, and it was symbolic of Florence rising above its bully city-state neighbors. This is a proud bit of civic pride to have David there at the palace in Florence. But even broader than that, it's what the Renaissance is all about. When you're looking into the eyes of David, and all of us know what David looks like, I think, you're looking into the eyes of Renaissance man. And what is happening is he is sizing up not the giant, but he's sizing up the darkness of medieval superstition and medieval fear. And he's saying, yes, I can handle that. I can rise above that. I can kick off the modern age for humankind. And that's what we're looking when we look into the eyes of David. We're looking into the eyes of humanism. It's not a repudiation of God, but it's a realization that the best way to glorify God is not to bow down in church all day long, but it's to recognize the talents that God gives you and then to use those talents with all of your energy and creative spirit. And that's how Florence rose up and led Europe into the Renaissance. So we track that, and then we'll go from there to the Vatican and to Portugal and Spain and to the Low Countries and to Germany as we see how the Renaissance swept through Europe. And you can imagine that's an exciting story. And that's just the fourth. That's just the fourth hour. I'm getting excited just talking about it.
I can feel it. Your enthusiasm for your travels and educating us about Europe is so infectious, and I think it's why you have such a devoted fan base. You're truly passionate about this continent. Yeah. And, I know that you've been asked this before. You've done shows outside of Europe. You've gone to Israel, you've gone to Iran. What would you, when you focus on the art of Europe, what's your response to those who have said that you're too Eurocentric in celebrating Europe, especially over other parts of the world? What do you say to those folks?
Yeah. Well, this is totally European-centric. And if it was called civilization, like Kenneth Clark's series was called 40 years ago or something, it would be problematic. But, of course, we're just very straightforward. This is just one slice of Europe. It's one slice of the world. It's the story of European art. And my favorite countries are outside of Europe. I love India. I love Indonesia and Thailand, Japan, and Colombia, and Central America. But my passion and my teaching love and my experience really is Europe. I've got a degree in European history. I've spent a third of my adult life traveling around Europe. I've got Norwegian heritage. For me, my mission with my 100 colleagues here in Seattle at Rick Steves Europe is to inspire and equip Americans to venture beyond Disneyland. I mean, Disneyland's fun for a few trips, but, you could go to Portugal. It's not going to bite you. It'd be less expensive, and it might open up a whole world to you. So for me, Europe is the wading pool for world exploration. And what I just love is for Americans to get a passport and be curious and get out of their comfort zone and leave their home. And it's amazing how how much you can learn about your own home by leaving it and looking at it from a distance. And it's amazing how you carbonate your whole existence if you can become a cultural chameleon and check out different cultures. So I love Europe, and that's, to me, a springboard for world exploration. But I've decided to focus on, where I've got the most connections, where I've got the most expertise. Mm-hmm. And frankly, it's a very big market from a travel point of view. Everybody wants to go to Europe. So if you're going to write a guidebook, you'll sell a lot more guidebooks to Paris than you will to Sri Lanka.
Well, we could keep talking all day, but I just, it's a pleasure to hear your voice and get a preview of this great series. I will definitely be watching. I've been a fan for many years. And so thank you, Rick Steves. His new miniseries airing on Jax PBS starting this weekend is Rick Steves' Art of Europe. Make sure to DVR that one. And thank you, Rick. Thanks so much, and congrats on all of your success through the years.
Well, thank you, Melissa. It's been a delight talking to you and to all of your listeners. Happy travels.
That's Art of Europe, airing Sunday at 5 o'clock here on Jax PBS. Also, make sure to join me and my co-host Matthew Petty today at noon on the Florida Roundup, where we round up the biggest stories across the state from the week. We'll begin with the life sentence handed down this week for the shooter in Parkland in South Florida, Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School. Some parents of murdered children down there from that shooting rampage in the school are outraged that the shooter wasn't given the death penalty. Also, controversy over Senator Ben Sass's appointment to lead the University of Florida. We'll tell you why some students in Gainesville protested this week. And people are still having trouble accessing insurance claims in the aftermath of Hurricane Ian. We'll take a closer look at that situation and what you need to know there. All of that coming up today at noon, live, statewide, on the Florida Roundup. So make sure to join us today at noon for that. A quick break, and in a moment, it's Hispanic Heritage Month. We've got to look ahead to a big party downtown this weekend, Viva Fiesta, and how you can be part of it. That's next.
This week on Science Friday, eating in space is a little complicated. After all, there's no gravity and no microwave. NASA's team of food scientists has a big job to make meals that are nutritious, delicious, and suited for spaceflight.
When we had crumbs on Earth, they fall onto the table, fall onto the floor. In microgravity, they can go anywhere.
Food in Space on Science Friday from WNYC Studios.
This afternoon at 3 here on WJCT News 89.9.
This week, there's lots for us to break down. What new did we learn from the January 6th committee? Racism rocks LA politics. And will a $1 billion verdict leave Alex Jones in financial ruin for lying about what happened at Sandy Hook? Join us for the Friday News Roundup next time on 1A.
Today, starting at 10 on WJCT News 89.9.
Welcome back. Well, Duval is closing out Hispanic Heritage Month with a bang this weekend. All thanks to Viva La Fiesta, the Hispanic Heritage Festival, happening tomorrow downtown in James Weldon Johnson Park. Yanira Cardona of Yaya Productions created and organized this festival, and she's here now to give us a little preview. Good morning.
Buenos dias.
Buenos dias. Good to see you. And this is such a fun party, and we're going to go out with a bang at the end of Hispanic Heritage Month. Tell us all about Viva la Fiesta.
You listen, just how Gloria Estefan said, the rhythm is going to get you, okay? You don't have to be Hispanic to enjoy this culture. In fact, I prefer you not to be Hispanic, because the reason why I put this on is so you can learn about the different culture and traditions that all 19 Latin countries have to offer. And we do that here in Viva la Fiesta.
Okay, so lots of fun. It kicks off at 4 o'clock in the park. It's free.
Gratis. Yes.
And so there's a lot happening. Music, food, even some kind of classes.
Yeah, we're going to have free salsa and bachata classes.
That's fun.
To spice people's life up. We're going to have traditional Venezuelan and Mexican and Brazilian dancers and their whole getup. So that's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to have stilt dancers to really make the carnival feel alive. We'll have a kids area, of course, a health area for those who want to get vaccinated and get more information, and just a lot of music and fun entertainment.
Now, most people know about salsa dancing, but tell us about bachata.
Yeah, so bachata, I call it like our country music. It's a little bit slower out of all the genres. Well, besides balada, because baladas are ballads. But as far as the dancing, it's a little bit slower, and it's the easiest one to dance. It originates from Dominican Republic, just how merengue also originates from Dominican Republic, and it's an easy dance. It's 1, 2, 3, tap to the right, 1, 2, 3, tap to the left. That's it.
Anyone can do that.
Anyone can do it. It's like country. They do line dancing.
Yeah.
You can do it with bachata too.
Fun. Okay, now the festival's official artist is Fulanito.
Fulanito.
Tell us about Fulanito.
Yes, so it's a New York-based merengue group. They're really very well-known, famous. They haven't been in Jacksonville in years, and it's an upbeat merengue. It's actually really good for those who need to wake up early and need a good energy boost. Fulanito's the band to do it.
Now, this is the 4th annual Viva la Fiesta, and we took some calls earlier in the show from people connecting with Sheriff candidate Lakesha Burton, pointing out that the Hispanic community in Jacksonville is growing by leaps and bounds. And whether it's the new sheriff or anyone else, people from the community want to engage and want to have their concerns addressed. Can you talk a little bit about the changing demographics of this city, what you've observed, and how that's being reflected in festivals like this and other ways that the 904 is becoming more diverse? And this is one example of it.
Yeah, it is. And I'm so happy you brought that up. I've been in Jacksonville since 2004. I'm a Navy brat, and I really have seen, the first time I came to Jacksonville was when I was 9 years old. In 1997, my dad was stationed in Panama. We came to visit, and I remember we went to the Kernan area, and it was nothing but trees. The Walmart wasn't even there yet.
I remember that's when we moved here. None of that had been built yet.
And so when I came in 2004, I saw the development, and to see it from 2004 to now, it's huge. I was in a panel not too long ago, and Jacksonville is becoming one of the biggest diverse cities in the whole United States. And the fastest growing demographic is Hispanic. Right now in the census is saying it's 11%. I personally think we're at least at 15%. The majority of the people that are coming here are Venezuelans, Cubans, Dominicans. The number one demographic is Puerto Rican, and the average age is 34, and they are opening their own business. That's what they're doing here in Jacksonville. They're contributing to our community. They're doing events right now. There's small groups that are reaching out to me all the time. They're doing entrepreneurs events. They're doing different workshops to help build this community and uniting together. And so I am happy that Jacksonville is finally paying attention to the Hispanic community here, because we have been contributing so much here. And there's so many services available that the Hispanic community or the immigrant community does not know about. And so there's some amazing nonprofits like NAFIDA who just opened that are opening that have helps for different immigrants and Hispanics. And it's something that we need in Jacksonville. You know, the more diverse it is, the more fun I think we're becoming.
Yeah. And this festival is all about fun, but it's also a way to connect.
It is, and it's a way to educate. So a lot of people think that because we all speak Spanish, we're all the same, but we're not. Just how in America they speak English, just how in Ireland they speak English, in Australia they speak English, but they have different accent, different terminologies. It's the same exact thing in the Latin world, you know, just because I'm friends with my Mexicans, sometimes like I don't understand what they're saying. I'm like, what does that word mean to you?
I can't understand. I'm Scottish, Irish, American. When I went to Scotland, I couldn't understand half of what they were saying. It's true. All right. So we're out of time, but folks, come on out Saturday starting at 4:00 for Viva La Fiesta in James Weldon Johnson Park. Yanira Cardona of Yaya Productions is the maestro behind this whole event. We're going to close with a little Fulanito, a preview of the music you'll hear at the festival, and happy Hispanic Heritage Month.
Yeah,
have fun.
gracias.
De nada. Have fun, folks. We'll see you Monday.
Yo soy el teniente, no puedes verme con par de lentes. Cheque el estilo, pegando siempre como un martillo. So ven, aprende de este chin, cómo se hace con mucho swing, sin pararse la noche entera, sin barrera, a tu manera, a lo que quieras, cánteme un coro con tu cuerpo, mami, tienes tú el derecho. Mira que hay bastante nena, no tenga pena, pecho a pecho, lado a lado, guaya la guira, lado a lado, cepilla, cepilla, guayalo bien, déjalo en brillo, gozadera total lo que brindo.
Support for First Coast Connect is provided by Baptist Health and the North Florida TPO.
North Florida TPO, proud sponsor